What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Antics Garage. We have a really special episode here for you today, and one that I've been looking forward to for a very long time, because in this episode we're going to be swapping a 5-speed manual into this 1969 Ford Mustang. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is this episode so special? Why am I so excited about it? Because this is not just any 1969 Ford Mustang. It is my 1969 Ford Mustang. That is right, everyone. I like Fords. Much to the dismay of Corvette Bill over here. And this swap has been something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. You will notice it currently is a 3-speed automatic. Not the original FMX that came in it, but I've got a C4 in it right now. Darn thing doesn't start in first, and there's way too much motor for this trans. We'll get to that in a second. But I've had this car for 10 years, and I've done quite an extensive amount of work to it over the years. For example, it's got disc brakes all the way around, so the rear end's been converted. It's on Viking coilovers up front, QA1 coils in the rear with a 4-link. It's got a Yukon 355 limited slip diff in it. What else does it have? What? It's got the wrong what? Nothing. Stock options on this car include a factory 9-inch rear end, the 351 Windsor up front. It's got the luxury interior. It's got AC and a power top. And the power top's also white, which is kind of a unique little combo. It's also got the cable adjustable mirror, which I hear these are a bit of a rare find, original, or kind of a rare option, but I'm not totally sure. The paint on it is old. It's probably about 40 years old, but the bones of the car are in good shape. It's got new floors, new torque boxes, still need a trunk floor, but other than that, it is pretty solid. Now, 10 years ago when I bought this car, it was a 100% original bone stock 1969 Mustang, but because I will never get rid of it and never sell it in any stretch of time ever, I'm gonna do whatever I want to it to make it exactly how I want it. The reason we're doing this swap in the first place is because of what I did here about 8 years ago. That's right, everyone. It's got a 7-liter stroker in it. This is a Ford Performance 427 stroker that I put in many years ago, and behind it has been the 3-speed all along, and this thing is just begging me for more gear, and it's about time I give it to it. So, not sponsored, but thank you very much to our friends at Modern Driveline, especially my representative Tyler, who helped me with literally getting every single part, hopefully, that I need to make this swap a reality. So you can see here, we have an extensive amount of parts that need to be swapped in. I don't have a ton of room under the hood, so what they were able to option me is a remote slave cylinder for the clutch, which actually is going to mount, I believe, on the Bellhousing, which is really nice, saves a lot of space, and it's hydraulic, so it should be pretty light on the pedal itself. I believe the pedal assembly is reminiscent out of like a Fox body Mustang. You can see they also give you some shortened brake pad as well as a clutch pad, you know, literally everything you need, all the odds and ends, nuts, bolts. And to top it all off, this box right here, which is housing inside of it a Tremec TKX 5-speed transmission, which I think is going to be more than enough to handle the power of this car. Makes about 450 horsepower, I think around 520 pound-feet of torque, but honestly, I really don't remember. But in the spirit of, classic muscle cars and putting the biggest motor in the smallest little car you can find, you can see that actually it just barely fits in there, which I think is kind of funny, but you can see it's quite a tight fit. So might have a bit of difficulty getting that clutch mounted, but we're gonna go on this journey together, and you guys will get to experience firsthand what it's like to swap in a manual in a classic car like this that came with an automatic. The first thing that we're gonna do here is I'm gonna rip this center console out just to kind of get stuff on top out of the way, and then we'll move underneath the car. Got a bunch of stuff to disconnect, like the linkage, the exhaust, all sorts of stuff. So I'm gonna set the camera up. I'll show you what I'm doing as I'm going along, and I really hope you guys enjoy, because this has been something I've been looking forward to do for literally the past decade, and now I finally get to do it, and I am so excited. making my way through it here. So you got most of the shifter assembly out. What's really nice about this kit, and actually what's really nice about these Mustangs is it appears as though I'm not going to need to cut a hole here. This looks like it's actually a block off plate, so I'm hoping I can just unbolt this and I've got a whole hole here to deal with. Now this kit is supposed to work. It is spec'd to work with the factory console out of the factory shift hole location. So I'm really excited, hoping that I can keep this console and that everything will look normal. But I guess just wanted to point a couple things out. You'll see as I'm working on this, you know, she's definitely a driver, you know. These overall nice condition, but you know, some things like these seams, they need to be redone here. The paint's a little off, but you know what the best part about all of that is that means that I can drive this car, and I do, whenever and wherever I want. I don't need to worry about parking it anywhere super far away from everyone. I don't even worry about door dings, to be completely honest with you. One day it will be painted a very nice pearl white, but for right now it is as it is. I actually like the condition that it's in right now because this is a perfect driver's car, and that is what these cars are meant to do. They are meant to be driven, and that is the best part, at least for me, of owning an old car. So if you've got an old car, get it running, make it safe, and just drive it and enjoy it, because that is what they are for. Taking a break from up top, though, we're going to move underneath the vehicle here, and you see we got a hell of a lot of stuff to take off. You can also see my exhaust, which is all welded together from here to there because I have had so many different combinations of exhaust made out of this one exhaust. It's pretty funny. I don't know, maybe Corvette Bill might help me get the rest of it back together. You can see here, you can get a good look at my 4-link back here and my QA1 coilovers. Had to cut the exhaust on the install for this, so maybe Corvette Bill will help me put those back on later. I'm not sure. He's pretty good with his exhaust though. But pretty nice under here. We got to get this exhaust down. You can see this transmission is definitely leaking. Got a lot of linkage up there to disconnect. There's a vacuum line on the back of the carburetor that's got to come off too. I got to remember to plug that later on. So yeah. Gonna get started under here now. So I've made it to the part in disassembly where I'm going to start undoing these converter bolts here. I kind of forgot on these C4s, the inspection cover is not on the bottom, and I already removed the drive shaft, so a little bit more annoying to turn this engine over, but no big deal. I can just do one tooth at a time. Once I get those all out, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect these trans lines. I already sucked all the fluid out of this from the top, so I'll probably have a bit of residual in these lines, so that's no big deal, but I'll get these out of the way. And then once I'm done with that, I'll, from the top, get that very uppermost Bellhousing bolt out. Then I can start kind of tackling the rest of them, making sure this trans is supported, of course. And then once I'm ready to drop that, we'll go ahead and make sure that this motor is supported here. So that way, when I drop it, it doesn't tilt back or anything like that. Best possible solution here, though, I just went ahead and loosened up this fan shroud, so now I can get a socket on the motor. So now I can just turn it over, loosen them like that. Super easy. Alrighty, and with the trans lines completely removed, I'm good to start on these Bellhousing bolts because I've got all the other peripheral stuff on the trans disconnected. Those top two Bellhousing bolts might be a little bit hard to see, but there's one right there and one straight down. Well, you can sort of see the head of it right there, right there. So gonna go ahead and get those removed. All right, everyone, I'm back underneath the car now. In that last clip, I got the two uppermost bolts on the Bellhousing out. Unfortunately, they will not come out all the way with the powertrain in place. Fortunately, at this point, I've got everything disconnected and supported right here. My engine is supported separately and my transmission right here. So at this point, I can drop this cross member down. Once I drop that cross member down, I'll be able to tilt the powertrain just slightly backwards so I can remove those last two uppermost bolts. Then once I do that, I'll bring everything back to level, remove the remaining 4 bell housing bolts, and then I'm going to walk this transmission off the motor. Once I've got that done, I haven't exactly figured out where I'm going to put everything yet, but I'm going to strap this thing up most likely underneath here, hanging without the trans jack, and then I'll just slowly lower the car down, put the transmission onto a piece of cardboard, and that way I can bring it wherever I want. So as you see, got the trans out. Was looking up here, found a nice little Easter egg. You see that right there, CBI, Mustang Restorations. That's actually a good buddy of mine, Cody Ingracia. You might know him and his brother Preston from the winners of last year's NBC Hot Wheels Ultimate Builders Challenge. I think that's what they called it. Anyway, great friends of mine. Mustang Restorations in East Dundee, Illinois. It's a world-class shop. I couldn't recommend them enough. I think that's where I'm going to leave it tonight, though. I got some cleaning up to do and a whole lot of stuff ahead of me. Now we got to start going the other way with it, figuring out where our clutch pedal is going to go, making sure we can get that assembly in. I'm also going to have to, as I was saying earlier, mount the slave cylinder to the bell housing. Really nice that it'll be hydraulic, so no more cable, so not like a traditional Z-bar, and it's actually completely necessary because I really have no room for a Z-bar up under that hood, or really anywhere down in that area along the firewall. So I'm really excited. I think the clutch in this car, once I get it dialed in, is going to feel really good, be super light and easy to use. So I'm really excited about that. Really cool that Modern Driveline has that hydraulic option, and I think it is like their kind of proprietary design on that type of system. So big high expectations for that. All right, everyone, it's a new day. We're fresh. Up under the dash right here, we're going to be utilizing, see that silver bung right there? We're going to be utilizing that. Hopefully I can just use that because I'll get to it later, but hopefully we can use that. Oh, also, one thing I'm going to have to do on these 69s is that fuse panel is in the way. So I need to remove that, and I'm going to have to most likely probably relocate it a little bit. So we'll cross that bridge. Trying to get our clutch pedal established here. Now, you can see those bushings up there, those steel bushings. That is if this car came from the factory with 3 pedals, that's where the support rod for the clutch pedal would go. Now, with the Modern Driveline kit, there is, I guess it must be optional, a needle bearing set. You actually punch those bushings out and you put the needle bearings in, and then it's secured with a snap ring on the outside. Unfortunately, all I have, or that I received, are just nylon bushings. Not exactly how I want to do it. I'd rather go through the hassle of pulling this brake assembly support bracket and putting those bearings in, but I am on a time crunch, so I'm just going to use the nylon bushings. Fortunately, so that way, actually, the clutch will be really easy to get mounted up. And if you see right here, fortunately, that little dimple right there is most likely just going to be right about where I need to drill my big hole. So we're going to put a small pilot hole there, I'm going to have to try to remove the master cylinder and the booster from the engine bay. Well, I can pull the master cylinder forward. Hopefully I can get the booster out of there so I can get myself enough room, but you know, we'll cross that bridge. But hopefully that should make it pretty easy to line up the bracket that actually is going to hold on the master cylinder. Alrighty everyone, slight change of plans. On this car there's really no room to pull the booster and the master cylinder out. There's probably about an 1/8 inch of clearance between the booster, the head of the master cylinder and the strut tower on this thing. So went ahead and drilled that punch out from the inside, and I've got, you see those little black dots? I've got the markings here. I'll try to hold this up for this plate, and this isn't going to be exactly where it's supposed to be. Actually, right about there. That's about where I want it. I've got the angle of it matched to the angle of this clutch pedal. You see how it's a little bit on an angle. Again, it's really hard to show you guys. It's so uncomfortable under here. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to get those holes drilled for the top and the bottom. You know, if I have to adjust a little bit, I can make them a little bigger and just sort of wiggle it. But I think that'll be just fine. And then I'll be able to kind of test fit this linkage. I still need to go. I'll have to come back tomorrow. I got to get a 1 3/8 hole punch for that center hole. It'll at least let me mock up this plate, and then I can sort of set up the linkage on the clutch pedal and just see if it will work as one, and then I'll tackle getting the master cylinder installed. And just like that, we got our holes drilled. So now that we got that out of the way, we can go ahead and get our bracket here mounted, as well as the bracket on the opposite side of the firewall that the master cylinder is going to hook up to. And just like that, we've got our brackets installed forward and inside and outside the firewall here. You can see now with the Modern Driveline kit, you use these two kind of button head Allen bolts to put it in. I would recommend studding one or both if you can. That makes it a whole lot easier to line this up and actually get it started, to get it tightened up. So yeah, highly recommend throwing a stud in. You can also see, if you look at it this way, we are just clearing that bolt right there, and it looks like the angle of this arm matched up pretty nicely with the angle of this clutch pedal. So I think our linkage is going to be pretty happy. Just hoping it all lines up once it's all together at this point. So I went ahead and I threw my linkage on just to see how everything was lining up, and I don't think I could have gotten it any better than that. That is, I didn't even have to use any spacers or anything. That is dead straight. I'm not going to do any adjustments. I've just got some regular nuts on here right now instead of the nylock ones they give you, because I'm probably going to have to take these off a few times to get the length right on them. But I'm not really worried about that right now. I'm just going to get the master cylinder installed, and then I'll worry about the actual throw on this pedal and everything once I've got fluid in it and I've got some other stuff hooked up. You will see up there that green plug is for that little fuse block right there. That's definitely going to probably be in the way, so I think I'm going to have to trim that, but I will cross that bridge when I get there. Now, before I go any further here, I did just want to test fit my master clutch master cylinder just to make sure that it will actually fit. I was a little worried about that distribution block there, but if you look here, it actually fits perfectly, and I can angle that fitting on the back so that way I clear my booster. Very pleased. I think this is going to work out just fine. All right, I don't know how much you can see of me right now, but at this point, before I move on to installing the master cylinder, what I'm going to do quickly is I got to start fitting my linkage for the clutch pedal, and which means I need to have this brake pedal shortened. So I've marked it out right here. I've left it a little big because I can just go back and grind it later, but this pedal does need to be shortened, or shortened to make way for the clutch pedal. Would help if I turn the air on. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but I must be the king of eyeballing things, because that was one cut. Just got it to stretch over. Got the trim ring on. Really happy with that. So now we should have plenty of room for our clutch pedal. Now, as it happens, actually, I can't tighten this fitting here with it in the car. There is just no room, but no problem. Got it marked out, got it tightened down. We're going to throw this back in here. Don't need to watch that, but now it's time to actually move underneath this car and see what we got going on under there. With that out of the way, though, we do have some bell housing modification to do, just a little bit to install our bracket for our hydraulic slave cylinder. Now, a couple of measurements that you're going to need to take, and again, these might differ based on your applications, but for the Fords, this pivot ball stud right here, I think the critical height's like 3.1 to 3.2 inches. You need to make sure that is in spec, but they do send you one with a lock washer already on it. That should be the ideal geometry. However, if you need to add or remove, you do have that ability should that arise. Now, you'll see I have 2 holes marked right here. That is actually where our mount for our hydraulic slave cylinder is going to go, and it can really only go exactly there. I've verified that the throw-up bearing, the pivot ball stud, and the clutch fork are all parallel with each other. They're all in line, so I am good. And you'll want to just, throw your clutch up there. Just, kind of zip it down, put your bell housing up, throw this in there, hold up your slave cylinder. You'll kind of be able to mock your slave cylinder up just like so, and you'll get a good idea of where it needs to be. Now, again, like I said, it can really only go exactly right there. So go ahead and mark those holes and drill those out. Now, assembling your clutch fork and throw-up bearing, pretty straightforward. Couple things, just make sure you grease it in all the right areas. And also, if you look here, see that detent right there? They have it facing the pivot ball stud in the instructions, saying that's the correct way to install it. So now to install this properly, very simple. You get your 2 pieces here. Again, that detent bump facing where the pivot ball stud's going to be, and we just slide it in just like that. And then installation into the bell housing is very straightforward. Just go ahead and slide that in here. And then there are 2 tangs right here on the underside of this. I'm going to need to use 2 hands for it, but you're just going to want to slide those over the pivot ball. You're just going to want to slide those over the pivot ball stud and make sure the tangs are under the each side of the stud. You don't want them hanging out to the side. That's the same for the throw-up bearing as well. You don't want the tangs to be off to one side. Now that we're under the vehicle finally, you can see I've sort of got a couple of things done already, and there's a pretty good reason for that. The first thing is that the most by far important thing that you do when you do a conversion like this is to make sure that your bell housing is properly indexed and square where it is supposed to be. Now, the reason I kind of skipped ahead a little is because I spent about 2 days, I don't know if you can see this at all, 2 days trying to get this seized dowel pin out of this engine block. It was installed backwards. I'm pretty sure this motor came with these installed already. So I think someone at Ford Performance was having a bad day when they put this in, or it was a Friday. But this was an absolute nightmare to get off. But you can see I've got my offset 7 thousandths dowel pins in there. They come in 3 sizes, 7, 14, and 21 thousandths. My advice to you is if you do a swap like this, it won't come with the dowel pins. Just buy all 3 and then return the ones that you don't use, because you're not going to know which ones you need until you actually get up here and start measuring, and it's better to just have everything so you don't have to wait. Now, I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to get super into the particulars on measurements and stuff. I have a ton of information on it, and you're going to want to do your own research to make sure that you understand what you're doing when you put this together. But the most important thing is going to be sticking a dial indicator on this flywheel right here, and the most important measurement is this inner diameter on all points. We use 4 points. 5 thousandths of an inch is what you are allowed to be off center. You can see these numbers here are from my 3rd round of measuring. I've got it adjusted a little bit more, and I think I'm exactly where I need to be right now. But you are definitely going to want to measure again to make sure that your bell housing is correct, or else you're going to mess a lot of things up if it's out of whack. And I think, you can quote me on this, I'm not quite sure, but I think on some of these conversions, if you don't have these numbers written on the back of your bell housing, I think it might void the warranty. So just make sure you're doing your measurements. Now, some other measurements that you're going to have to do to make sure everything is all square is also using a dial indicator is going to be your flywheel runout and your engine block runout. Basically kind of the same thing, but measured, a little bit differently. So the first one is just measuring the tolerance of your flywheel to make sure that that will that is nice and flat and true, and also the block plate here, which is where you put the dial indicator on the flywheel itself and actually run it around this block plate here. You're going to want to make sure there's a certain parameter. Again, it might differ based on your application. All these old cars are same but different, you know, so could differ depending on if you've got a Camaro or a Challenger or a Chevelle, something like that. So you're going to want to make sure that you have that in place. Now you will notice I have my pilot bearing installed. You're going to want, this kit from Modern Driveline came with the pilot bearing, and it's very important. Another thing to consider is how far in you have to drive your pilot bearing. In my case, I was actually able to drive it in all the way, and I used a very precise measuring stick in the form of this 3/8 extension here. Fortunately, the measurements were large enough to where I didn't need to use anything super precise, but I figured out my depth from the end of the crank just under the lip of this pilot bearing out to the face, the exterior face of the bell housing, and then I also measured the length of the input shaft in relation to the case of the transmission. You'll need to make sure that you have enough clearance for the input shaft to, I think it's at least in this application, at least 3/4 of the way penetration on the input shaft into the throwout bearing. In my case, my input shaft is going to go all the way through the throwout bearing. However, I will still have a bit of a gap here, very slight gap, probably a couple millimeters, which you do 100% absolutely need. You do not want the face of that pilot bearing rubbing or touching the splines of this shaft in any way. It must be completely isolated on just this portion of the shaft here with a gap in between. Now, installing the clutch is pretty much the same as any other manual car. Just make sure, biggest things are that when you get the kit, make sure that the tool that it comes with matches the spline on your friction plate here, and also you're going to want to verify that it matches with your input shaft as well. That's important. And also make sure you can see here, well, I hope you can see it, but this says flywheel side right here. You can install these backwards, so, you know, don't do that. The pressure plate locates on 3 pins on this particular flywheel. Some clutches do not, or some flywheels do not have the locating pins. This one does. You will just want to make sure that you get everything centered in the right place. We'll grab a couple bolts as placeholders just to make sure that this stays up here. Now I should also mention that this kit also comes with all ARP hardware, which is really handy. For example, these pressure plate bolts, these are M10 in my application, so it says 50 pound-feet right there. I'll probably do it in 2 or 3 stages, but just make sure that you're using the supplied assembly lube. And with the ARP bolts, if they do come with washers, just make sure it's facing the right direction, because that can cause issues as well if you've got it upside down. That being done, now we can throw this up here. Just like that. We'll get to all this over here in just a second, but I just want to get this thing up here. And that looks pretty good so far. So, alrighty, and with our bell housing all buttoned up, I went ahead and threw everything together for the slave cylinder here. Now you'll notice this right here is a countersunk screw. You're going to need an 82-degree 5/8 countersink bit in order to get that, because the case is going to come down in the middle here, so you can't have anything sticking up here or else it's not going to sit right. So that's important. You can see here how I've got my hydraulic line for the slave cylinder. I have it going under my steering column. I'm going to have room to pull it away, so that way there's no chance it rubs on anything that's rotating here, so that'll be all nice. And then the final thing to check here is just to make sure that your clutch fork is sitting in the opening properly. They want it no more than halfway in the opening, and mine is sitting just before that, so that should be all good to go. But now that we got all that out of the way, it's time to get this transmission up here. Now I'm actually going to grab Corvette Bill for this part, because I've got to tip my motor up a pretty decent amount in order to get everything lined up for the trans. And the TKX does not have a flat bottom, so it just helps to have another set of hands there just to make sure everything goes smoothly. And frankly, you know, you spend a lot of money on this, so just want to make sure everything goes right and this trans gets installed properly. Where are all
19.
It's a 19?
17. 17.
Ooh, second guess. 18.
18.
All right, somewhere in between.
68 to 70. Somewhere between 68 and 70.
Jack's trying to find the smallest ratchet for the smallest socket to take a nut off.
I was actually trying to find your ratchet that I've stolen. More?
A little more. All right, hold it.
Got it? Good?
Yep, jack up. All right. Jack up a little more. All right, put a bolt in there.
Is that resistance we're feeling now? Oh, you all right?
Watch out for that rack, it hurts. Spare part. It's all fun and games till you forget the washer.
It's all fun and games until you forget the washer. The heat from the exhaust melted the washer.
Yeah, I'll take you guys on a little field trip really quick to show you this cream puff we just got in here. 4,600 mile C6 Z06. Look underneath this thing. The monoleafs are still shiny. Bill, how easy is it to take things off under here?
Oh, this is...
Are you in heaven? Look at how shiny everything is. It's like it's never moved.
Yeah, everything's shiny, but if you guys want a little tidbit trick, they don't show this on the interweb, but Corvette Bill figured out a way to do it. First time I've done it. I haven't had to do it this way. Right up here, at the top of where this, right here, is a little bleeder for the slave cylinder. GM factory techs and everybody that I talk to in different forums and stuff like that are like, oh yeah, just cut a hole in the floorboard and put a little window there. And I'm like, 4,600 mile car. I am not carving this guy's car up. So doing a little thought process and a little finger twitching. And I have figured out a way to get to the bleeder, to change it out, to put a speed bleeder on it, because unfortunately, the master cylinder took a puke. So we got to change that out. But it's a nice little weasel trick up there. I think we're going to have Jack's computer hands get up there for us and do what we need to do. But it's there. It's almost ready to come out, folks.
Yeah. And then it comes back to get a blower, right, Bill?
Actually, it's supposed to be coming back to get, he's talking about putting a blower in it, doing some side effects and some other stuff. So it's like, ooh, stay tuned. Let's see what we're going to do to that car.
So, part of me, it's a little saddening to cut up a 4,600 mile Z06, but hey, this is Antit's Garage, so whatever we do, we know it's going to be done properly. That's all that matters.
They're Ford parts.
They're pretty heavy duty, yeah, but they're super wide, you know what I mean?
Yes, but they're Ford parts.
More heavy duty than a small block Chevy now, that's for sure.
We won't even get into those.
They are.
That's like a Twinkie trying to hold a motor in. It doesn't do any good.
Alrighty, everyone, and with that, our transmission is in. Our cross member's all bolted up. I've got clearance up top. Might persuade that a little bit. You can also see here, with how this transmission is set up, how it's cast and everything, the shifter itself actually is a little bit to the right, so I think I'm going to have to trim a little bit on that right side there just to make sure I have enough room, but that's no big deal. Now, they do give you an entirely new speedo cable and a gear to go with it. They sent them separately. I looked at the bag for the speedo. It looks like it's just a factory 69 Mustang 3-speed or automatic cable. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually put the gear on. They do send you a new little hold down clamp, which is nice because mine was a little bit crusty. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get that put in, and then we'll see where we're at after that.
Also went ahead and mounted the slave cylinder here. There's not too many good places to put them on these cars, but there was one factory hole right here, so I just made up this little bracket with a tab on it, so that way I could have a hole over here, and then I could tighten this down and it won't shake around at all. I'll show you underneath how I've got everything ran, but you can kind of see right here, you have the feed and the supply line. They're kind of both running in parallel with each other around the steering shaft, so everything should be clear there. I'll show you underneath how that looks. But now we are about ready to bleed it, so I just have to disconnect the pedal from the master cylinder, or the reduction linkage from the master cylinder inside the car, and then we can go ahead and start bleeding this thing. So you're gonna make this little upward facing loop right here, and you see I've got this bottle just zip tied to the rack. So we're gonna crack this bleeder open just a half turn, and then should start pushing fluid out. Once you get that loop in there, you're gonna crack the bleeder screw half a turn, and they give you this little syringe here. Just make sure that you push it up slightly, and so that that tip is full there, and that there's no air in here at all. You're gonna locate the tip of this in the reservoir. There's a little hole in there, and you're gonna push firmly on this syringe. 3 seconds is as much as it should, or the longest it should take to empty this of fluid, or else you're still going to have air in your system. Once you've done that, go ahead and close the bleed screw, then remove the vinyl tubing, and then reconnect your linkage as shown here. I've got everything just kind of loose, and hopefully, I'll be honest with you, this is my second go around, so hopefully this time I get a little more travel out of that slave cylinder down there. Also unfortunate for me, how am I supposed to tell if I'm in the car? So you're going to be my eyes here, and you tell me if that moves at all. All right, how'd we do? All right, take two. I got a good feeling about this one. All right, so now that we've established that it's at least somewhat bled, it is working a lot better. The first time I did this, it was moving like 1/8 of an inch. So here's my base mark. I need 1.25 inch throw is complete disengagement. So this is my beginning. I lined it up right there. That's 3/4 of an inch. That's 1 inch. That's 1.25 inches. So I'm gonna try my best to set the camera up, and we will see just how far it goes. And then hopefully I can just sort of play with the linkage maybe at the pedal side and see if I can get it to go further if needed. All right, I went ahead and redid my lines with a much finer tip marker, so hopefully I can get a better idea of exactly how much I need to try to make up for with the linkage in the pedal. So let's see where we end up. Now, it's not particularly easy for me to get a camera down here, but I'll just explain what I'm going to do here. This little brass-colored piece here, that's going to be the actual end of the rod into the master cylinder. Now, what I'm going to want to do to try, I'm going to get as close to that extra 1/4 inch that I need out of it. So I'm going to draw that. You just spin it and draw it outwards. And then I'll have to make up that distance on the pedal side, because this is already pretty much all the way up with that up there. So that I'll probably have to spin in slightly, but that is what I'm going to want to spin out. All right, so for this first adjustment here, all I did was adjust that brass piece down there 1 full rotation out, and I left that top one. It's about at its limit to where I need to adjust the top one. I wouldn't want to take the brass piece out any further, or else I'd have a lot of deflection in that bolt up there that's holding that top joint in. So let's see if that got us any closer to that 1/4 inch we need. All right, everyone. Actually, after I installed that reservoir over there, I did try to bleed it once, and it just wasn't working quite the way that I wanted it to. So sometimes you got to take a step back and just come back to it another day. But I got my thinking mustache on today, and we're going to get this clutch bled once and for all. What I've come to learn about these slave cylinders, it's what I think is the issue, really.
is that the whole system in general is it's easy, a lot of places for air to get trapped. So this pedal was super light and I really couldn't do anything with it. It just wasn't engaging at all. But now we've got a really nice firm pedal all the way through and it feels really good, and that clutch is engaging as it's supposed to. Just got to adjust it a little more, try to get that last 1/4 inch out of it. All right, everyone, under the car here, I just wanted to walk through the adjustments on this. I would recommend you start with your slave cylinder. Basically, what you're going to want to do is disconnect the pedal up top from the master, and then you're going to want to come down here. So with the pedal disconnected up top, go ahead and back all these off, and then you're going to want to make sure that this plunger here, this rod, is recessed all the way into the slave cylinder. Then what you're going to want to do is just push the clutch fork here up against the fingers of the pressure plate. You don't want any preload on this when you tighten it down, but you do want it to make contact, which I know is a little bit counterintuitive to how a lot of you have done throwout bearings in the past, but I promise you that's how this one's supposed to be. So go ahead and just make sure that your throwout bearing in there is just touching the fingers on that pressure plate, then go ahead and tighten this down. My car does vibrate a lot, so I would recommend some Loctite if you need under this nut here, and you should be good to go. But I would start here, and then you move up top to the pedal assembly.
So we're up under the dash now, and basically the name of the game is eliminating the play in this pedal. So you can see I've got nice stiff pedal here. There's no kind of intermediate like a dead spot, and then I get firm movement out of this pedal. So again, basically what you're going to want to do here is you're just using that center one, that brass piece right there. That's going to be your adjustment on the master cylinder, and then this piece here to help you firm out the pedal. You'll notice when you're doing this that there's going to be kind of a little bit of a dead spot at the very beginning of the stroke into the master cylinder. That's what we're trying to eliminate here. You're going to want to just balance those both out to make sure you got a nice stiff pedal to make sure you're getting that full disengagement. You'll also see, let me see if I can show this for you. I'll go ahead and actuate the pedal here. You can see I have no side loading on that arm, okay? No side loading is permitted. You can see I have nice straight action the entire throw of the pedal. I did actually have to trim up one corner of that fuse box way up there to allow room for the bolt hole here. In retrospect, I probably should have put them on the other side, but no big deal there. And I also, just to be safe, I did take a bolt there, and I did shave down the head just to make sure I have plenty of clearance between this fuse block and this pedal assembly, so there's no binding right there. But you can see it's nice, everything's nice and straight. That's about how it should look when you're done with it.
And another good point here, when you do this on your own, or if you decide to do this, this syringe here, they say no more than 3 seconds on the depression when you lock this into the reservoir. I would try to do it in 2. You gotta slam that thing home and just really force all that air out of there. That was the big difference maker for me, is really pushing this thing home and getting all that fluid and all that air through the system. And now we got a nice pedal feel, and we're ready to continue forth.
Now, one of the things that Modern Driveline sends you when you do a swap like this is an ordering sheet for a new drive shaft, because distances change, new transmission, so it's likely that your factory drive shaft will no longer work. I no longer have the original engine and transmission in this car, nor do I have the original third member in this car. So, to the best of my abilities, I did my measurements on my back, and I found that my factory drive shaft only needed to be shortened by about 1/4 inch. So a quick Google, and I found Acme Truck and Brake, local heavy, medium and heavy duty truck drive shaft repair shop by me, and I brought it in and I met a guy named Bill. He said, all right, let me take a look at it, I'll see what I can do for you. And I said, no worries. And he said, I might be able to get it. He said, I might be able to get it done same day, but I'll let you know. We'll see how bad it is. So, not a half hour later, he calls me. He goes, man, this thing is bent. He's like, I don't know. We usually don't bend them back once they're at this point, but we're gonna stick it on the lathe and see what we can do with it. End result is, instead of spending like $800 on a new drive shaft, I have my factory 55-year-old drive shaft right here. Brand new slip yoke, brand new U-joints, both sides, and he even included some brand new little clamps here for me. Painted it, balanced it, straightened it, and it was done in 3 hours. And after talking to him for a little bit, you could really tell that Bill's the kind of guy that really likes what he does. And those are the kinds of people that we like to work with here at Anson's Garage, people that love what they do, because that's where you're going to get the best service, and that's where you're going to make those relationships with people where
Now I know if I ever have an issue, you know, I can call him up. He said, we usually don't work on the small stuff like this, but you came in on a slow day, so I'm gonna see what I can do for you. And so we're gonna go ahead and throw this thing in here and see if it works. Like I said, I only need to take about 1/4 of an inch out of it. Wound up not taking anything out of it. So we're gonna see just how close I am. And I figure, you know, if I can get a thumb, you know, at least a thumb in between the end of this slip yoke here and the rubber seal on the tail shaft of the transmission, I should probably be pretty okay. Alrighty, got my slip yoke greased up here. Let's see how this fits. So we're about at the point where we're going to put some fluid in this thing. And neat little trick you can do. You can see the fill holes all the way up there, but there's not a good place to actually tip the bottle into it. If you go ahead and just poke a hole in the cap and throw a hose down into it and make a little hole on the other side if you've got air, what you're going to do, stick one end of the hose in your trans or your diff, whatever you're trying to fill. Take your airline. Do not squeeze this trigger. Do not squeeze the trigger. Just kind of ease it in there. You see that fluid will start to drain. It works better on some bottles than others. Having a little bit of difficulty with these. You can see it'll start pushing that fluid up in there. Pretty much the last part of it is just the wiring, and there's really not a whole lot to it. On the 69 Mustangs, automatics had a neutral safety switch, obviously, but the manuals did not. So you do need to fool your car, well, rather your starter solenoid, into making it think there's something there. Normally what you can just do is take your factory plug from your trans and just loop those two together, those two red ones, loop them together. However, I have done something a little different. I have wired them to a super secret kill switch inside the car. Does the same thing. I've owned this car for 11 years and no one else has driven it except me, so I'm not really concerned about accidentally starting it in gear. But yeah, so I went ahead and wired that into a hidden kill switch. But for you, you would just have to wire it. If you wanted to make it actually function as a neutral safety switch, those two, the plug that's on the passenger side of the transmission, you just run those two up to those two wires here. That are looped. Now on your car they wouldn't be looped to begin with, but yeah, pretty easy. And then besides that, you've just got your reverse lights. Those come from the driver's side of the transmission. They come out on that little plug, and I just wired those into the reverse light wiring for that plug, but inside the car. And that's pretty much it. This thing is done and good to go, but it's very dark outside, so I'll see you when the sun comes up. Take this thing for a spin. Now a little bit because the pitch of my powertrain changed slightly, so I think it's time for some custom headers now. What a difference though. This car is so much more fun to drive. Totally woke this thing up. I am absolutely in love all over again with this car, as if I fell out of love with it to begin with. I cannot
cut the tunnel in your car to make it fit. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. But now that we have the TKX, some more modern technology, a transmission made specifically for the aftermarket, for situations just like this. Now I'm going 50 mile an hour and I'm just humming along. Like I said, if you hear a vibration when I'm accelerating, it's because my header's touching my steering box now, because the pitch of my powertrain changed ever so slightly. And it looks like now I gotta hold my camera up. I just wanted to give a huge thank you to Modern Driveline. Again, this video is not sponsored, but if you've got an old car with a 3-speed auto in need of something a little more, I couldn't recommend it enough. And the light foot clutch is so nice. It is so easy. It feels like you're I drive a lot of Corvettes at the shop, and it feels just like I'm driving a modern Corvette with how easy it is to use and how light it is. So thank you again, guys, for watching. We really appreciate your support, and you got to stay tuned. That yellow Cutlass you saw in the background in the video, we're doing vintage air in that, and we got a supercharger coming up on a 2017 Camaro, so you guys won't want to miss that at all. But as always, please like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the box. Let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. But if you were on the fence about doing this swap, you shouldn't be. Spend the money, do it. It's so worth it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.